Okay. Good evening, everybody. Just letting everybody into the Zoom room. Thanks for joining us. Those of you who managed to be here, I see some little people and some big people. Hello to everybody tonight. Okay, that looks good. So welcome to the Books That Help webinar. Let me just share the PowerPoint that I've got so I can keep on track. Just a second. Okay, so this is the Books That Help webinar 2025. Thanks to everybody for joining us this evening. The plan for tonight is to talk a little bit about the mentorship this year, what we're looking for, what to expect, the timeline of things. We're also going to just talk a little bit about Books That Help. We get to meet Abigail, who is this year's mentee. We're going to quiz Abigail about the highs and lows of being mentored. And there'll be time for Q&A at the end for anything else that we haven't covered. But we will be talking about some top tips for writing a book that helps and what we're looking for this year. This will be recorded and put onto YouTube. So hello if you're watching this back. And if there are any notes that you want to make, please do. But know that you can watch this back at the end of the evening. So in case we haven't met before, so there we go. My name is Clare Helen Welsh. I'm the founder of Books That Help, founded in 2022, I think it was. I'm a picture book writer first and foremost. I say picture book writer. Picture book fanatic is probably about the sum of it. Completely obsessed with picture books. Fell in love with them in around sort of 2012. I started writing those and haven't really stopped since. I'm also a Write Mentor course tutor where I run the advanced picture book course. And yeah, I founded Books That Help. I love picture books. I think something that's really special about them is the fact that there is just such a huge range of books. So I like writing funny, serious, silly, non-fiction, wordless, rhyming, novelty. I think there's probably not anything I wouldn't try in a picture book form, and that's one reason that I really, really, really love them. If you want to find out any more about me, there's a website here. I offer critiques and courses and mentoring, and I love doing events. But on to Books That Help. So, as I said, it started in 2022, and it's a place, first and foremost, to champion picture books that have social messages at their core to help children in today's modern society, in today's world. I just think it's really important to champion the people behind these books as well as the books themselves. It's not the kind of thing you probably find in a supermarket necessarily, but still really, really important. And I believe books can be used therapeutically to support children. They're great just for a reading experience on their own. If you are having a tricky time or you want to tackle a conversation with a child, I really think a book is a great way to start that. So initially it was a place to share reviews of really amazing, what we would think is outstanding books that help by category. So things like celebrating difference, divorce, we've got illness on there, we've got moving house. Some things are really sort of, I would say, quite difficult subjects, so grief and loss, for example, and others are more light-hearted, so looking after the environment, numbers, fostering a love of reading. So there's quite a big range on there, but basically a book that helps for us is something that will help children in today's world. Since last year, we have also started the Wellbeing Classroom, which is really exciting. In that, we have chosen our most favourite books that help and created resources to go with them. So if you're in a school or you're working with children, you might want to have a look at the Wellbeing Classroom and find different ways of using books with children. And we've also started authors and illustrators that help. Again, it's to champion people who are passionate about books and well-being. So this month we've got Rosalind Maroney, who is our illustrator that helps. She's made us a lovely video to share on our socials. You can find out more about her on our website. She's also the illustrator of all our lovely little doodles and pictures on the website. So if you've seen those, that's Rose's lovely work. So that's a little bit about sort of the starting point of Books to Help. Obviously, we decided a few years ago that it would be great to help more people get books like these into the hands of readers and to get them into the hands of publishers as well. So we started the mentorship with Little Tiger. What you basically can expect in the mentorship is to work with myself over 5 virtual sessions. And in order to sort of get to that stage, we're asking people to submit a text of around 800 words, picture book with a social message at its core. And to also include a paragraph about yourself and why you think this is a book that readers need to have on the shelves. We'll talk more about the mentorship later, but that's in brief what tonight is about. It's helping you come up with some ideas, some skills, some ideas of how to submit and what we're looking for. Just going to let somebody else into the room. 1 second. Okay. And so, yes, it should be a fun evening. You might have come across our previous mentees. So our first ever Books That Help mentee was Lucy Faulkner. Last year, I mentored Flora Craft. And this year, very excitingly, we have Gail. I recommend you follow them on social media because they have things to share and updates occasionally. So it would be good to have a look at what they're up to. But yeah, we're really excited tonight to be with Abigail. I'm going to be quizzing Abigail on the highs and lows of the mentorship. She's got some tips to share with you. She's going to tell you a bit about her experiences, and we're also going to be sharing our favourite books that help most recently in the last couple of years. I thought you might be interested to hear a bit more about the text that we chose last time around. So Abigail's text was called William Won't Eat. It was 528 words. And the pitch line that Abigail used at the top of the document was a picture book about food refusal and allergy. So nice and succinct, not a very detailed synopsis, but I got everything I needed to know just from that short little tagline. What Perry liked about the text that Abigail sent in, so Perry is Senior Commissioning Editor of Little Tiger Press, and he helps to choose the mentee based on the text that we receive. He said Abigail's story stood out on the strength of its idea. It feels like a common problem that's not overly written about. The first person voice really captured the child main character speaking. So I guess when we received lots of submissions, I think it was just shy of 100 or just over 100 submissions last time. What Perry really liked about this one was it was different. So we hadn't seen anything else about food allergies in the submissions that we received. He liked that it was something that has a wide reach and a wide appeal to the picture book demographic, but wasn't something that he sees lots of. And I don't think there are very many books about this particular topic, which is really exciting for Abigail. The first person voice was brilliant, and it was a really engaging way to start the story. And yeah, straight away, we loved the voice of the picture book. Paired with the great idea was a really winning combination. And my first experiences of the book, my first impressions were that it was a really sensitive piece of writing. Although there was the first person voice, which was really engaging, it was very delicately handled as well. The way Abigail wrote, I could tell that it was something that meant something to her. It was great that it came, Abigail's writing from some personal experience and using things that she had learned. That made for a really sort of authentic story. And as Perry said, we saw lots of potential for a book that would help children and families around food. So I'm going to meet Abigail now and stop sharing, so hopefully we can say hello. Hi, Abigail.
Hi.
How are you this evening?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Yeah, lovely. Excited to be chatting with you. Yeah, and to have everybody here to I guess to congratulate you on a successful mentorship year. It's been absolutely joy working with you. So we started working together in January of this year. Yeah, and we've done lots in that time, haven't we? We've been busy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been incredibly lucky to be mentored by you, Claire. It's been an absolute dream. It's been indescribably brilliant.
No, as you will find out as the evening goes on, it's been an absolutely fabulous mentorship working with you also. And yes, luck does come into it, but hopefully you can see, as you know, I've just been talking about your text, it did really stand out for its um application, but also the idea in itself. So it was a worthy winner. So what I thought we'd do, Abigail, is just talk a little bit about mentorship, how you came to apply, and then people can maybe take some tips. If you have any questions for Abigail that you would like that you'd like to ask, pop it into the chat and I'll keep an eye. First of all, Abigail, could you tell us a bit about your writing journey? So, you know, how long have you been writing for? What kind of things do you write? Maybe picture books, but perhaps other things as well.
Yeah, so I think it's probably slightly stereotypically, I've been sort of writing for as long as I can remember. Always sort of had a notebook, even as a child, and was always trying to write very, very long novels, um, which rarely got finished. And so, sort of, as in my sort of early adulthood, I was still sort of working on various novels that then when I came to reread, I couldn't stand a word I'd written and would, you know, abandon them. I looked at one recently, it was over 100,000 words. So, and it was dreadful. I'm glad that I gave up on it. But it's funny then that I should come to picture books. Um, so after I had children, or after my first child, I started taking my writing um, more seriously, in that I started sort of pushing myself to actually show it to people. Um, and as small children are turned, he did not sleep. He didn't sleep as a baby, but at breaking point, he didn't sleep as a young toddler either. And kind of at our worst point, I was sort of lying awake in the dark with him for 2 hours, 3 hours at night. And you know, you get into all those things of what do you do, what do you not do. And I ended up making up stories to tell him. And there were some nights where he would get, you know, he could be quite dysregulated, very overtired. And you know, you're not quite sure what to do. So I just started, you know, I didn't want to read that book again. I didn't want to put the light on. Um, and I started writing them down and I thought, oh, picture book. I don't have to write 100,000 words. I can actually read it again and show it to other people. Um, then I realized that what I'd written, you know, I still found it really hard to read it and think through it, but it felt a lot more manageable because of a picture book isn't 100,000 words to do that
Mm.
editing. But at the same time, I was seeing the impact of stories on my son, and seeing, you know, books that we people gave us or we got from the library, and really noticing the impact that that had on him, on how he was able to relate to the world and think about his experiences. And I think those two things together really kind of plunged me into picture books. And as a parent, they can really change your day around. You know, you can go from having a really bad day to reading a picture book, and suddenly you're both laughing or you're transported into a different world.
Oh, that's well, first of all, 100,000 words, wow, because that just completely blows my mind.
Terrible
Um,
words, though, like 100,000 terrible words.
and also, obviously, I'm not glad that you didn't have sleep for a period of time, but I am glad that that's how you found picture books. And you're so right about picture books are special. I think, you know, that they're unique in terms of format because of the interaction between words and pictures, but they are very special because you read them, you know, with another child. You know, it's connection. So that's really lovely that that's how you came to picture books. I'm really pleased that you did. So what made you apply for the mentorship?
I was I wanted to keep writing and I wanted to keep going, but I also knew that I wasn't quite getting it. Um, I did the whole, you know, send wrote one text and sent it to agents way too early. And you know, I know now that you do a pitch and you have three picture book texts. I just sent one off, which didn't, you know, didn't didn't get anywhere. But I started working with picture book critique partners, um, and and that started to really help me develop my craft, and to help me see that that there could be potential here. And it was one of my critique partners actually who read a very, very early version of William Won't Eat, who told me about the mentorship and said, I think you should apply.
Ah, brilliant. Another tick for community. I guess if you found this webinar, then hopefully you already have a support network around you. But community are such an important part of being a writer. I mean, I don't think I would be published without my writing buddies. So what did you enjoy the most about mentorship?
Um, well, working with you, Claire, has just been such a joy, and you're so generous with your time, with your experience, and I think getting your um, expertise and learning from you has got to be the top highlight. That, and also, of course, getting feedback from Perry at
Mm,
Little Tiger, and I think the two of you are a powerhouse of knowledge, and that's really helped guide me, and I can really kind of see the difference um, as I've gone sort of through various drafts of William, but also writing other texts. I can really see the impact that it's had on my writing.
it's great that you can apply things to books in the future as well. So not just work. We haven't just worked on one story, have we? We've been. I mean, it varies from mentorship to mentorship and whatever the writer is looking for and what they need. But we've been able to work across several texts this time, which has been really nice. And I've seen sort of fantastic writing, but also fantastic ideas and how things have coming through in your writing in the next drafts. I see that you're a very hard worker, Abigail. A lot of stuff that you've done is applied across text, which is brilliant. And an attitude is such an important part of being a writer anyway. And you've got determination in abundance. Yeah, it's brilliant. And also, I guess, yeah, you're absolutely right. Having the mentorship, um, working collaboration with Tiger is absolute gold, I think. I mean, I still remember how I felt when I was trying to break into the picture book world, and finding any nugget of feedback is just, it's so difficult to get. So the fact that we've got Perry on board for the mentorship is really exciting. So Perry will feedback on a text that's chosen for the mentorship, and that's what we'll start our process of working together with. Um, and then there's a first look. Once it's finished, we send it back to Perry again. A first look. I guess the ideal is that he might take it to his team, and then I guess potentially could be acquired by Little Tiger. But just the feedback on its own is also a really great opportunity. So what was hard about the mentorship? Because I'm not even going to pretend that it's all been roses in terms of, I mean, it's been enjoyable, but I know I have pushed you a lot of the time. So what did you find tricky about the mentorship?
Um, I think um, I think the times when we've known something's not working and kind of trying to sort of unpick what that is, and then um, sort of always I always want to come to the next session with a better text, but we're also trying out different things and experimenting, and sometimes things that we try just don't work. Um, but I've always sort of felt um, it does take a lot of time to write a picture book. I think I've been working on William for over a year, and I think um, you do need to give like time and space to the mentorship and to um, working through everything, and that's something that for me has been a lifesaver, um, in terms of coping with parenthood, and all that life brings with it. But at times, you have to really prioritize your writing, which I think is a good thing.
They are deceptively simple, aren't they? And because on paper they might just be a few hundred words. I think you're right. There's a process that you sometimes you can't rush if you want, that kind of special, satisfying, high quality text. Sometimes it does take a few different drafts, playing around with things that might work. No, and you're right. Sometimes we were like, oh, actually, no, it didn't work, did it? And so we keep going and keep trying. And there's no formula for writing, a picture book. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. Um, but I just wanted to thank you really for embracing that kind of chaotic bit when you write a picture book, and we're like, we're not quite sure which way to go. Can we try both? And then like you were brilliant at just being open-minded and giving everything a try. And I'm really, really proud of the text that you have now, and I can't wait to hear more about what you ever think of it. So yeah, it's very exciting. Um, what would you say the mentorships had the biggest impact on you as a writer?
Um, I mean, it's impacted me in so many ways. I think in some ways it's given me confidence to take my writing more seriously. And I've always sort of have had that serious, it's always been something that I've always wanted to do. But I think there's something about having a mentorship and having someone who you're working with, especially someone like you, Claire, who's so, so well known, so experienced, so prolific. It does kind of give you permission, I think, to say, I really want this, and I'm really going to do everything I can. And that's given me a bit of confidence to sort of, reach out to people who I maybe wouldn't have on social media or on places like Right Mentor, to say, to ask their advice, or to, talk through things. I think the picture book community, is one of the best communities out there. Everyone is always so kind, and so generous, with their thoughts. Um, so I think you'll see I think the impact is very tangible in terms of my writing. And I did get in touch with a critique partner recently who I'd worked with a year ago, and showed her some of my recent stuff, and and she could see the change, which was really, really lovely, and felt really meaningful to me. But I think it's a combination of the impact on my writing, but also on me as a writer, building that confidence.
I love that you. It sounds like you see yourself as a writer now, Abigail. Like you're like. I know that you were serious and you were things, but I love that the fact that you are like it's part. You're outwardly reaching out to people in the community, and it's difficult sometimes to give ourselves that permission and to call ourselves writers or authors. You absolutely should be, and I'm glad that you have grown in confidence because you deserve it absolutely. Um, is there a particular book or some books that you think you've come across, maybe not even during the mentorship, but at some point in your writing journey that kind of changed the way you felt or fell in love with storytelling? Like what kind of have been the pivotal texts that you would say, yeah, have sort of helped you along your journey?
Oh, pivotal text. There's been lots, because I think I never stopped reading children's books. Um, that's always been a kind of magical space for me. But I think, um, reading reading to my children has given picture books a seriousness and an importance which, to be honest, they probably didn't have before, because I was still reading children's fiction, but I wasn't reading picture books, until I had kids again. And I think seeing how important that process was for me and my children, was really key. So I mean, a few really important texts for me from that. Um, I feel like it's a slightly stereotypical one, to pick, but The Colour Monster, partly because, um, my when I was pregnant, with my second child, my eldest, who he was 3 at the time, he had a meltdown at a stay and play at nursery. I think he felt very protective of me, and it was absolutely, anyone who's a mum knows that meltdown where you're just like, this is the worst meltdown in the world. How, this, um, I should be able to control it, or, I should be able to get through, and I'm not. And that evening we at bedtime, we were reading together, and I was talking to him about it, and he started talking about his emotions in colour, the way the colour monster does. And sort of said, he felt, and he was able to express his feelings in a way which really blew my mind for a young 3-year-old, talking about how he had felt red when people came near him, and he just wanted to look to protect me and the baby, and really quite a sophisticated way.
Mm.
But other books, I think things like No by Tracy Corduroy, which is one that I've read too many times. Uh, but books which draw upon a common theme, which we all recognise with children. No is about an aardvark, Archie the aardvark, although I think it's a different name depending on whether you've got the US or the British version. Who goes through that very kind of what I think we think of as the terrible toddler age of saying no to everything. But it's written in a way which is really fun. It's really funny. I recognize it as a parent. My children recognize it from a different perspective. They recognize it as children. And kind of seeing that journey happen where the book is speaking on so many different levels. The illustrations are speaking in one way, then there's a narrative that is speaking to my children in a really fun way, and they're not necessarily knowing that they're learning something from it. There's that joy in the story, and I think the story is powerful in and of itself without it needing to be anything more than just a story. But I think seeing the power of books that do help has just been really key for me.
Sounds like you're living and breathing the mantra of books that help, but it doesn't always have to be in an obvious way, does it? Just the sharing of a book is helpful, and there's usually some kind of light-hearted takeaway in a picture book. Not always, but the fact that you've been, say, living and breathing those kinds of things. I guess that's one thing that has stood out to me whilst I've been working with you, Abigail, and something that I mentioned to Perry is that all of your ideas that I've read all come from a very child-centered place. I guess you are a mum, you have young children, but you really capture the struggles and then think about what you can do in book form to help that. I think that's a really great strength of you as a writer in terms of what you do consistently across text. I just wondered, was that the case for William Won't Eat? Like, what was the starting point for that book?
Um, I was quite frustrated because so my eldest he is has multiple allergies, and it's very common with children with multiple allergies to refuse food because they know that food is making them unwell. They might know they've got allergies, but they don't fully understand that. And I was trying to find books for him that tackled food. It didn't necessarily need to be allergies. I found some books on allergies which were just very, very specific and kind of, almost too specific.
Mm,
I think it's and I think when you've got something that your child might potentially really relate to, the messaging it can be, if something is very, very on the nose, you kind of might have a sense that your child might just react negatively to that. And I was trying to find books about food in general, about fussy eating, um, or books that might sort of help him. One of the dietitians we'd spoken to had sort of recommended finding books that had food, um, and it was really surprisingly difficult to find that and to find things that addressed it in a that wasn't sort of you must eat your vegetables
mm,
kind of way. And I'd been thinking about it for a while, and I'd been trying to think how would I do it, um and then I was trying to sort of think, well, how could I do it in a way that isn't going to be like you know really sort of if my son thinks he's reading a book that's telling him to do something, he's not going to enjoy it. He's not going to,
mm,
anyone knows if you tell a 3-year-old uh, not to do something, they will immediately do it, and if you tell them to do something, they then won't do it.
mhm,
Um, so yeah, that sort of is where I started thinking about it.
mm. You've touched on lots of interesting points there, Abigail. I was thinking about when I first wrote The Tide, which is about dementia, the editor said to me, this is the kind of book that historically would have been educational, so it would have been non-fiction. Like, here's a book to help us learn about disease, and then there is a move towards, you know, books, as you say, that just have that kind of light touch, but are openers, are sort of starting points for deeper discussions that are still stories first and foremost. So don't aren't too heavy-handed, but that you can without them realizing give sort of subtle messages and start conversations about things in a really much more intuitive, natural way, which is the power of books, isn't it? When like you think you're reading a story, but actually there are other things going on there. Um, yeah, and you found a gap in the market, and you were writing something that you needed, and hopefully other people will need too. The other thing I think was worth mentioning, is that initially the book was more focused on allergies, wasn't it? So certainly in the where you kind of had pitched it in terms of what you were hoping to achieve in the book. Something Perry commented on was that is like food more generally might have more appeal. So allergies maybe are more niche and more specific. But one thing we did in the mentorship was to broaden that a little bit more, wasn't it? To make it a book about fussy eating and food and helping children be confident with food rather than just about allergies. And then more people can hopefully benefit from the book.
And I think that commercial angle was so key and so helpful from you and Perry, and it's something that I've really learned to think about audience in a different way.
Mhm.
Because before, audience was always children, but there's a whole industry around it, and I think thinking about what has that wider appeal is so crucial. But also, what I really valued is that you really helped me get to the heart of the message and get to the heart of what I was trying to think about. Because
Mm.
when we were, it wasn't sort of, this the message wasn't you it needs to be something that's of a more wider appeal. Like, we really thought hard about what is the message, um can it work with it being more broader, um which really made me realize that the thing that I had really wanted in a book was much more about picky eating or food refusal, and about how you navigate that, because as a parent, how do you navigate that, if you're and I wanted something that would really kind of help both child and parent, because because you're surrounded by people, telling you what to do or what not to do. But also it made me realize, I think it was in one of our first conversations, Claire, that it made me realize that I don't think my children would want to read a book about allergies, and that there could be a way of getting across those messages, or exploring. I think it's it's an exploratory thing. It's not saying this is what you should do or think. It's
Mhm.
let's explore this idea together around food, um, and it was so. That's something that I just found so helpful from both you and Perry, is just thinking about it in a commercial way, but also not losing the heart of what I was trying to do.
Mm. You handled it really well, I think. And you're right. There's, a picture book isn't a magic wand. Like, and it's not no picture about any subject is going to be like a magical answer for life's ups and downs. They're tricky and it's challenging, but it's a starting point. It's some reassurance. It's comforting. If nothing else, other people are going through the same things that you're going through. And one thing I think you did really well, which was, in your initial draft, in your submission, was that you did understand that you didn't want it to be a book that was sort of like telling someone to do something. So the fact that you had this dog character called Dover, a lot of the playfulness and fun and appeal actually in the text that you sent through was the fact that the story was actually about a friendship between two characters, William and the dog. And then the message kind of unraveled from that. So you had a really you had a the friendship was like in terms of what a child would see, I think it was the friendship first, and then the message came after that, through the adventures that these two have together. And I think that's the right balance, I think, potentially. I mean, sometimes you can lead with the problem and the topic or the issue or the theme. But one thing that we liked about your book was that it was actually a really nice story. and they so happened to also solve this issue around food. So yeah, it was really well done right from the start. So yeah, sorry I mentioned that. And maybe a couple more questions. Is there anything that you think that writers should know about the mentorship before they apply?
Um, I think it's worth just I think you need to be willing to work with feedback. It sounds like a really obvious thing, and I think Claire, you are so supportive, and you know your 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 feedback has always hit exactly what it needed to hit. But I think you do need to come to it with a willingness um to keep working at it and to try different things, and to be able to hear that feedback. um you are putting yourself out there, as it were. There were times when I was emailing you something I'd written, Claire, and I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna sit, press send. Or the next day I'd sort of reread something, and that thing where you've written a new draft and you think, oh, it's amazing, and then you read it the next day and you're like, oh dear. um but I think being able to kind of commit to that process is really key. And um I think this is probably something, again, very obvious, which probably if you're writing picture books you're already doing, but just reading as much as you can, um uh, in terms of particularly I think in terms of more recent picture books. I've started like doing library catalog searches, filtering it by year to try and sort of pick out the more recent ones. But I think having having that knowledge of the industry and knowing what else is out there um, is really helpful.
Great tips there. Any other tips for people who want to apply?
I think specifically if you're applying, um, um, I guess kind of touching on what I've just talked about, I would think about, um, is your text unique? Um, is it too on the nose? Um, uh, Thinking about what books are out there that have helped you, or that you like. What is it about those things? Often it's that they're doing something different. Um, and I think one of the things on the kind of application form from last time, which um, I found really helpful, was it was talking about um, uh, what is the text doing in terms of a social message, but trying to think about it in terms of that another book isn't doing, because there are so many books that cover the same topic again and again and again, and I think it can be quite hard to stand out, or to do that um, in a new way. Particularly, I think since COVID, and there's been that kind of there's been so many picture books about feelings, for example, which I love. That's brilliant, but then it makes it quite hard, I think, to think, well, how am I going to do something unique with that? And I think trying to think, where is your book going to be in the market? Where is it doing something that other books aren't doing? Where is the need for it? Because I think, with Little Tiger as well, there is a commercial element to it. You are thinking um, about, well, certainly for me, I was thinking I want to, I really want to one day be published. So I guess I came at it from a slight, I have been trying to think as commercially as I can, but also in terms of what else is out there, and what dialogue are you're in a dialogue with children and parents, but also with other books in the market potentially.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I think I pulled you well, Abigail. That was brilliant. Like, well, I've got a few slides with some tips on, and you've kind of summarised a lot of them there, which is brilliant. What about if someone's not sure whether they should reply or not? If people are like, oh, I'm not sure whether I will or whether I won't, like, is it worth it? What would you say to anybody who's sort of on the fence?
Um, I would just do it. Like, what have you got to lose? Um, I applied not thinking, I definitely didn't think I would win. I was thinking, oh, it would be so, so good if I could be a runner up. I would be so, so happy. And I was like stressing, like, oh, and if I don't, you know, um, I think you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I think even if you don't place, the process of sharing your work and of thinking in that mindset will help you as a writer. I've entered lots of other competitions which I've not, I've not won. And I think you just have to keep going.
Fabulous, excellent advice. If anyone has any questions for Abigail that we haven't touched on already, please do add them in the chat. We'll have a look. But what we'll do now, Abigail, is talk about some of our favourite books that help, if that's okay with you, and then that
Yeah.
might strike some inspiration for some people. So I have picked three different books that help that that I've really enjoyed, current ones that I thought I'd share with you. The first one is called Tiger's Last Roar. This is by Harriet Howe, who's a debut writer, and Katie Cottle. And this is, I guess, falls into the category of like an obvious books that help, in that it's about the loss of a pet. So it's very clearly a book that helps if if you knew a child that, had lost a pet, then this would be like the perfect kind of read. And what I liked about it was the absolute gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous language in it. It's so lyrical, so beautiful. You can tell that every word has been so carefully chosen. Obviously, that comes with editing, but the writing is really beautiful. I also like that there's a fantastical element to this. So rather than being just about, the death of a pet, um, there's this jungle theme, this queen of the jungle kind of theme. The cat is actually called Tiger, and that's meant it's less on the nose, less direct. If it had just been about death of cat and it had just been sort of a domestic setting, I think it would have been quite hard to read and maybe a bit too emotional. So the fantastical element adds like adventure. It adds different things to illustrate. It adds lots of visual variety, but actually for the story, it adds a bit of distance, which I think is important in this particular case. Yeah, so it's beautiful. It's also at the end of the book some non-fiction ideas for like how to help children through the loss of a pet, and like even places to sort of draw your pet in kind of frames. So really carefully and thoughtfully done, and really really beautiful. But yeah, particularly like the fact that there's fantastical element, which I think works in these hard-hitting books sometimes. I think yeah, next one is Mandy is still a banana. So conversely to this, another picture book that I love this year, but in a completely different way. This is Mandy is still a banana. Zoe Arena, Amy Evans approaches the idea of sort of self-acceptance and learning to love what makes you unique and different, but in a fun way. In lots of dialogue, in like quite sparse writing, but still really fun with still a gentle message at its core. So it doesn't have to be the book that you're writing necessarily like one of those big hard-hitting themes like divorce or loss or moving house. It could be something more light-hearted than that. As long as it's got something that you think children need in today's world, that's really like the what we're looking for, something a book that can be helpful on some level. Um, yeah, this is a really funny, bright, pacey, voicey. I think I've got some slides from it. This is the opening spread. Mandy is a banana, a yellow, bendy, half moon shaped banana, but still a banana. The thing is, Mandy doesn't want to be a banana. She thinks bananas are boring. She's bored of being yellow, she's bored of being bendy, and she's sick of her sticker. No, Mandy's got other ideas. She wants to be. So, like, it's again really lovely to read aloud, really carefully chosen words, but in a more sort of person with more personality, um, in terms of narrator style than the lyrical poetic kind. It's cheeky, it's fun. Yeah, and I know that this book has been used in lots of different ways. So the appeal in terms of message is quite broad. I think I saw Zoe saying something like it's been used to help with bullying as well. I think I saw that on social media. So there's lots of ways this book can be used. Oh yeah, and it's really got some fun characters. Like it's just visually brilliant. This is Blip the blueberry. And then again, just to show you different ways that books can help can work. This is Once I Was a Tree. Again, a recent book that comes under helping the environment. This is like really unique. So we talked about coming at books that help from like a really original place, and this does that. So this is written from the narrator is the tree, but at the beginning the tree is a seed. So once I was a tree, I was tall, green, and handsome, and before that I was a seed who lived in a pine cone who came out of a squirrel's bottom. I should explain. So it's actually quite non-fictiony with a unique main character and unique narrator in that we're talking about a tree. We're talking about the book actually that used to be a tree, that used to be a seed. Um, Again, tons to illustrate. Like it's quite fantastical, lots of adventure, lots of story. So we've got here a rabbit nearly landed on me, a fly licked me, but a beetle rolled me around for a few hours. Her name was Barbara. I'm going to roll this poo home, she said. Eat it. I liked Barbara. She had pizzazz. My roots let me suck up all the good stuff from the soil, and a few days later, it was time to 1, 2, 3, squeeze out some leaves. There they are. Don't you think it looks like I'm waving? Hello, I am. And I'm waving to the sun, saying, Hey, sun, over here. Sunlight to help me grow. So just a little snapshot there of a really different, interesting approach with humour. Doesn't have to be humorous, but they're doing something different and something that is, I guess, yeah, something that is not the norm. So some aspect of the book is quite unique, whether it's voice or the topic or the format or the narrator or the characters. Something about it is a little bit different that cuts above and stands out in terms of a submission. So a few different kinds of ideas there. Abigail, I think you also brought some top picture books, didn't you, that you have read recently, might inspire
Yeah.
writers?
So my first is Troll by Francis Stickley and illustrated by Stefano Martinez. Um, it's your classic troll under a bridge, hurling insults at passers-by until one day Rabbit um, comes along, and Rabbit can't hear. So she tells the troll to come and speak to her face so that she can lip read. And Troll realizes it's not actually so fun to call people names when he can actually see their face reacting. Um, and Troll goes through a kind of journey of self-discovery um, because in order to be kind to others, he has to first learn to love himself. It's a really funny, beautiful book. My next is I think this was published last year. It's an American book actually. Sylvia Finds a Way, um, which is I think it's a great book about um, resilience and friendship and communication. And it's about a slug um, who's there is a gardener who is trying to stop this slug and her friends, the crow, and various other insects from eating all of her vegetables. But they need the garden to survive. And so Sylvia tries various different ways to try and make sure that there's something for everyone. And she has a much more gentle, kind approach than some of her friends. I am also a gardener, and I now think about slugs differently after reading this book. And more importantly, so do my children, who now tell me I need to be kind to the slugs. So I'm trying that. I'm not sure my dahlias are pleased about it, but I'm trying. And my last one is a less obvious one. It's Do Not Say These Words by Frances Trostevin and illustrated by Rianne Wright. Um, and the, it's about a book where certain words are making children giggle, and giggling produces giggle gas, which is bad for the planet. So a scientist has come up with a machine that will change those funny words into something not funny. Um, and so, of course, the words that you mustn't say are things like poo and fart. Um, and I really like it because, I've got a 4-year-old boy now. The amount of times that I say we don't talk about poo unless we're in the toilet is like that. I say that so many times a day. And then when we picked up this book, it just took the tension out of the day, because it had been a particularly, it was funny because it had been a particularly bad day for poo talk. And then it was this book that we picked up, which was it just made me laugh and kind of think, you know what, they're just words, but also not just words, obviously, but it also helped. It made my son laugh. It made us both. It just took the tension out of everything. But I think it's also a book that is celebrating um all the things that our body does, and all those noises and things that we probably, certainly as grown-ups, we don't really talk about. But I think there is something in it in terms of um allowing things to be funny and allowing bodies to be bodies, which was also really powerful.
Something that's occurred to me as you're talking, that book in particular, is like, don't forget, actually, these books are for children, first and foremost. So yes, I guess when you're writing these and you're submitting something, you're thinking about what Harry might like, what I might like, what publishers might like, and what agents might like. But it is important to, to consider, if not focus, on what a child is going to love about this book. I know there are gatekeepers, but they're the audience first and foremost, aren't they? And even if your book got through various processes, you want children to love it. And so I think you're really good at that, actually, Abigail. I think you're good at starting from child-centric places. I think that's definitely one thing that across all your work that I've read, as I said before, it stands out as something is your strength. You come at angles and topics and themes from places that I think children also would resonate with and relate to. So it's a little. I hadn't used that tip. I've got some tips to share, but I hadn't put that one on there. But yeah, that book reminded me of that. Don't forget your child reader. So I put together a few pointers that may be helpful for people who are submitting. So some of these we've mentioned, so they'll be repetitive, but just as a place for you to have it all in one go, is to research the market. Make sure you're either writing about something that's a gap that you haven't seen, that you think, I haven't found this book and there really should be one. I guess caveat that with, make sure that it's not too niche. So why is there not a book about this yet? If it's too niche, then that might be because there isn't a sort of a commercial appeal to it. Or are you going to write a book about some kind of perennial theme that is relevant to picture book readers' lives? If you are, say something different about it. So you mentioned that too, Abigail. If you're going to write about friendship, say something that hasn't been done before, or do it with a unique twist. So change up the character, the voice, the format. Tell it from the point of view of a book or a seed or a tree, for example. That might be a way of giving a different USP, a different twist on one of his perennial themes. So either find a gap in the market, or write about a theme that's a perennial, that it's always most loved by picture book readers and their grown-ups, but either do it in a different way or say something different. I think generally in terms of picture books, there is a shift towards books that have strong storylines. So not so much those sort of lightly poetic books that could be quite poem-like, but actually rather books that have strong beginnings, endings, things that happen, lots to illustrate, plot points, something unexpected, surprises, twists, like lots of story. Try not to be too predictable, try and surprise us, yeah, and have plenty of action driving the theme. Think carefully about your audience. So will enough people want to read your book? So it's going to have commercial appeal. It doesn't need to be perfect. We haven't talked about this yet, but we're not necessarily looking for a book that's like, ready to go to print. Actually, what we're looking for, and what I'm certainly looking for, is to help a writer who has a really brilliant idea that is coming from a place that they absolutely see this book as really important to them, and I would like to be able to help get that book through the stages, to sort of introduce you to people, to Perry, to try and get that book over the line. So to me, it doesn't matter so much if the writing isn't 100% perfect. Obviously, get to the top stage that you can, but for me, really, it's more about the idea. Is the concept something that should be out in the world for children to enjoy? And don't forget to tell us why the book really matters to you, because it's important you know why you care. And I think if we know why you care as well, that will also help. So some questions to ask yourself in terms of working out whether your book is different enough and has a commercial appeal. Have you written a pitch line? It'd be good to include that in your submission. It will help you work out if you've thought about it succinctly enough, and if you're doing too much, you'll find it hard to write a pitch line. And that might be one way of helping you work out whether you've got a clear, focused idea. How is your idea doing something new? Will it resonate with a wide audience? Does it have a strong hook? And is there a character with something ambitious to solve? To me, that the Slug book, Abigail, I haven't read that one, but I think that is quite an ambitious, interesting problem to try and tackle. Like how are you going to make me fall in love with slugs? That is quite an interesting starting point. It's ambitious and tricky, and so I'm already like invested and engaged in that idea because I want to find out how it's going to end. So um, be sure that you've got like an interesting starting point for your stories to follow. Okay, that's all the slides. So after this session, there will be a link on the Books That Help website under Mentorship tab where you can upload and apply to mentorship if should you want to. This recording will be available. It was supposed to live stream to YouTube, but I think didn't manage to do it. But I will make sure it's on YouTube, and I'll also put the link onto the website so you can watch it back if you need to. But are there any other questions about things that we haven't covered or that you would like to clarify before we end? Whilst people maybe think, just in case, Abigail, is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't talked about or said that you would like to share or yeah, or offer as words of wisdom to the people thinking about the next mentorship?
Um, I would just encourage everyone to go for it and to work on your draft as much as you possibly can, um, and just get it to the best you can. Um, and and good luck.
Super, thank you. I should have said that the closing date is the 31st of December, so you've got time as well. So there's no immediate hurry, but it will be open from this evening. In terms of a timeline, I should think I did have a timeline to share. Maybe I didn't. Let's have a quick look. Did I put that on there? Nope, I took it off. In terms of timeline, so the closing date is the 31st of December. Perry and I will longlist and shortlist in January. Don't quote me on it, but roughly by February, we'll be hoping to give you some news. And then the mentorship will start from then onwards. And it can be flexible, whether you prefer, mornings, evenings, afternoons, can really work around when you're available. So don't worry if you have a day job, that's absolutely fine. We can do evenings. Yeah, I guess someone's put here that a tricky thing would be deciding what to submit. That is hard. So we have limited it to one text per person, just in terms of reading. It makes it slightly more manageable if you pick the text that you think is your strongest and has the most appeal. That could be quite hard because picture book writers tend to be prolific and have lots of ideas, so I can imagine that would be tricky. Daniel says it was really helpful, no problem. Kirsty says, do you have opportunity to work with an illustrator too as part of the mentorship? No, I haven't actually thought about that. I guess because when you submit a picture book, you don't so publishers like to find their own illustrators. So let's say hypothetically you wrote a manuscript and probably Perry said, yes, we want to acquire this text. He would then be working with designers and art directors and a big team to pick the illustrator that they think would be the best fit for their vision. And so it's kind of a step further along. What the mentorship is for is getting that idea, that story that you've got into the best draft possible so that it can be acquired. Then, if Perry was to say, yes, I love this text, we want to acquire it, then I guess that would happen. But a big part of writing a picture book is to think visually. So certainly some of the work we do is thinking about page turns and spreads and how to write illustration notes and how to write to leave space for the pictures. but not with an actual illustrator. Super. Is it only one submission? Sorry, Carol, it is. That's just because I think it's a lot of reading, and I want to make sure that I read everything carefully. And I think if I'd opened it up, it would be possibly a bit unmanageable. So rest assured that I do read every book really carefully, but that's why it's one per person. Super. I think that's all the questions. Yeah. Super. If there is anything else that you think of that we haven't covered, you can always send Abigail a message or me a message on social media, or you can email. But hopefully that's given you some motivation, some inspiration to submit. Abigail, I just want to say that obviously I'm not like cutting ties here now. We're still in touch, and I'm still looking forward to things that are around the corner. But I just want to reiterate that thank you for applying, because it's been an absolute joy working with you. I think William is an absolute brilliant text, and I'm excited for things around the corner, hopefully. I'd love to see William as a published text, and more than that, you've been a really absolute pleasure to work with, and not just William, but all the ideas that you've shared with me all have such childlike appeal, unique voice, unique angles. So yeah, I'm really excited for your picture book journey. And it's been a pleasure to be a part of. So thanks,
Thank you.
thanks everyone for joining us. And thanks for watching back if you're watching back on the recording. Yeah, thanks everybody, and we look forward to seeing which stories you submit. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.